The Trump administration just dropped its AI action plan designed to fast track US dominance in the AI race.
Meta has officially gone on record saying no thank you to the European Union's new voluntary AI code of practice.
The rivalry between OpenAI and Google DeepMind just took on a new forefront with the battle over the International Math Olympiad. Sapient Intelligence just open sourced their hierarchical reasoning model, or HRM, inspired by how the brain works. AI is now designing experiments that look totally bizarre to humans, but they actually work.
Can AI Copilot make you a better doctor even in the middle of a Nairobi clinic?
Amazon made a bold move into the AI wearable game. Google says these summaries help users and don't hurt websites, but a new Pew Research study says otherwise, and the numbers are pretty stark. Google just dropped some fun new generative AI features into Google Photos and YouTube Shorts.
Can we manipulate AI into doing something that it shouldn't? According to Wharton researchers, yes, we can.
Welcome back to What the AI, where we decode the latest developments in the world of artificial intelligence. Hey, Annie.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Pretty good. This was like a crazy busy week for a lot of people, but a crazy busy week for AI. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with AI Radar, the segment where we break down the biggest headlines and updates from the world's leading AI players. Think of it as your quick fire pulse check on what's hot in AI this week. Tell us what's hot.
I didn't want to necessarily put this one first, but I felt like I had to. We'll start off with news out of DC. The Trump administration just dropped its AI action plan, 28-page blueprint with over 90 specific policy actions designed to fast track US dominance in the AI race. The plan's really built around three big pillars: accelerating innovation, investing in AI infrastructure, and ramping up global AI diplomacy, all while cutting what they call unnecessary red tape.
I totally agree with you. This is an important one to go first. Obviously, big news. Last week, we were talking about dropping diss tracks. This week, we're dropping AI action plans. So give me some more details. You told me sort of the big pillars, but can we go a little bit further?
Sure, 28 pages. Decent, and that is 28 pages of, a lot covered in a couple sentences, right? So there's a lot of content in there, but it's got everything from building of new data centers, incentivizing open source AI, which I thought was kind of an interesting aspect to this, revising export controls around silicon and chips, as well as AI models, repealing legal barriers that might slow AI development. So a lot of kind of work on that front as well. And the administration is also calling for new rules to prevent what it calls ideological bias in AI systems, requiring federal contractors and agencies to prove their models are objective and not biased in any particular political way.
That's super interesting. Of course, we talked a few months ago about how Biden had released the AI Bill of Rights and then Trump undid the Bill of Rights. That had a lot of sort of words around preventing bias and fairness issues. And so this is interesting that the Trump sort of version is ideological bias and not trying to, but while also having maximum, truth-seeking type of principles too. So anyway, some interesting stuff in there. What's the response been that you've seen so far?
The response is a lot of devils in the details, and in this case, in the implementation, the actual regulatory impacts. There's a lot of kind of agency X should do Y, agency Z should do A, B, C. So we'll have to see a lot. So we'll see what that is. So the critics are out there claiming that the plan leans a little bit too far towards big tech's wish list, kind of prioritizing deregulation and private growth over safeguards, things like the AI Bill of Rights, or some of the safety mechanisms that Biden was looking for. So I think it would be a big question about whether this kind of falls into I think it probably depends a little bit on whether you're on the accelerationist track of like get government out of the way and let these companies keep building an amazing thing and take advantage of it, or a little bit more on the doomer, the world's going to end soon and we got to stop AI from killing everybody. And this is definitely not your plan if that's your fear. But if you're worried about US falling behind in the race to build the most sophisticated AI, this is a pretty decent blueprint for how to kind of step up our innovation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how it plays out because Trump's plan is very like market driven. And, of course, that's maybe not all that surprising. But the two things that I feel like the market at least states to demand and care about from a consumer market standpoint is privacy and explainability, which are both sort of, he's silent on it in his plan as if those are not big needs that he needs to sort of think about. And so that's where I think still there's going to be some sort of consumer expectation, potentially state legislation that comes out on those two issues that I think are still pretty important to people. So
Yeah, there was actually some language around explainability. So these got some desire for the government to invest in research towards explainability, believing that in critical areas like healthcare or energy infrastructure or security, explainability will be important. But again, I think it'll all depend on like, okay, so DARPA is going to go do something around explainability. What NIST is going to do? What's that going to be? Because a lot of these are very sweeping directives to go, hey, go work on explainability, NIST. And we'll have to see what NIST or DARPA does in these areas to know if this is really going to move the needle and if it's going to change the direction. So we'll see. People are always going to complain about these things, and as we said, that the real important stuff comes in what do the agencies do with this, and does it actually go anywhere, or is it a 28-page press release and marketing memo? We'll see.
yeah, agreed. So yeah, maybe not fair of me to say it was silent, just light. We'll say it was light on
It
on
was light. It's not the
explainability.
focus for sure. The
Yes.
focus
Yeah.
was not on safety and transparency.
Yeah. Cool.
If you are not a policy nerd, but you are a math nerd, the next story here is for you. The rivalry between OpenAI and Google DeepMind just took on a new forefront with the battle over the International Math Olympiad, something I never thought I would be reporting on in this thing.
This is amazing. The first story was for the policy nerds like me, and the second story is for the math nerds like you. So love the competition. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So first up, OpenAI announced that it had achieved gold medal status in this year's latest International Math Olympiad, and a few days later, Google DeepMind announced that they had also achieved gold medal status officially at the IMO, while OpenAI is not official.
I don't think in the Olympics you can actually tie for gold medal. Did they tie it for gold medal? I don't understand this. Who was the
They didn't
actual
tie. So
silver?
gold medal is like a tier of success in the International Math Olympiads. It's not the number one. They haven't won yet. And there was a little difference in the tie. Gemini did it under real Olympiad conditions, the same problems, the same time limit, and the same grading criteria used for actual human competitors in this year's competition. The IMO itself certified the results for Google Gemini using their new deep thinking model. On the other hand, OpenAI had former medalists grade the results after the fact, so not quite the same competition style and standards, but the models hit the same performance mark. Although, obviously the test was a little bit more rigorous and transparent in the case of DeepMind, but still pretty impressive.
Okay, I agree. Pretty impressive. What does it mean for normal non-math nerds, normal users?
I wouldn't get too carried away, as impressive as this is, and it's quite impressive. It doesn't really make these models, in my opinion, particularly helpful in any way, more so than they were before. I mean, solving international math Olympiad level problems under time pressure is one benchmark for intelligence, but it's not something that I'm tasked with doing on a daily basis. And I think not many are. So, I think it's another one of these great benchmarks for a certain kind of intelligence that the models are achieving and, performing at, but also probably doesn't really mean they're much more functional for any day-to-day use cases, unless you're trying to work on the International Math Olympiad problem set with your kids, and then maybe this is going to make it really a lot better for you. But I think for most of us, just an interesting, signpost in the development of these models and their capabilities.
Okay, cool. Well, speaking of intelligence, tell us about our next story.
All right, next up, we got a brand new model that's turning heads, and not because it's bigger or faster or solving International Math Olympiad problems. Sapient Intelligence just open sourced their hierarchical reasoning model, or HRM, a 27 million parameter architecture inspired by how the brain works.
Okay, will you put that number 27 million? We put it in context. You said it's not bigger or faster, but where is that relative to others?
Yeah, this is the really interesting part about this model. So 27 million is very small in context of modern LLMs. Just how small? GPT-4 is estimated to have over a trillion parameters. Even smaller commercial models like Claude 3 or Mistral tend to clock in at like 7 to 70 billion. And even Google's smallest Gemma model built to run on phones and laptops has 2 billion parameters. So 27 million is like, it's pretty tiny actually in the context of what most of these LLMs have in terms of parameter numbers.
Interesting. And what does it mean when it says that it's inspired by how the brain thinks? What is this like HRM brain thinking model? How is it different from a traditional LLM? How do I think about the difference between those two things?
This is, I think, the whole core of what they've tried to do differently. So most language models kind of started off just word completion, right? Just next word completion. And then they added this chain of thought prompting or building into the model, which tries to mimic human reasoning by breaking things down step by step and forcing the model to kind of think sequentially. But Sapiens says that's just a workaround, and HRM actually reasons more like a real human, using two interconnected modules that operate at different speeds. One handles fast, instinctive thinking, and the other does slower, more abstract planning, kind of like blending the system one and system. If you ever read that book, was it Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow? Kind of the same thing, right? You got two different systems operating in different ways, coming together to solve problems.
Is that you have, like, your old brain and your new brain? This is, like, instinct versus
No, no, it's like an instinctual, intuitive thing that operates without you really thinking about it, and the one that's more systematic and thoughtful. Great book if you haven't read it. Worth reading. It's very long. You maybe Cliff's notes it or shove it into ChatGPT.
Okay, well, I guess the million-dollar question is, we have the quote unquote traditional LLMs with their chain of thought reasoning. Now we have this new type of AI that is more like a human. Is the one that's more like a human working? Or it's like what's better?
Well, so as we've always said, benchmarks are kind of difficult to judge, if they're really great examples of real world thinking. But this model is solving complex reasoning tasks. It's doing Sudoku Extreme, 30 by 30 mazes, and the notoriously hard ARC AGI benchmark. And it's doing it with just 1,000 training examples and no pre-training. So on these benchmarks, HRM is already outperforming some of the best known models, including OpenAI's O3 Mini High. I just love that we got to like Mini High, so many caveats. Claude 3.7. On Arc AGI 2, it hit 5%, which sounds small, but it's well above many of the more production models, much larger. And in Sudoku and maze solving, things that have been difficult for a lot of even the reasoning models, it scores nearly perfectly. So it seems like, at least in some categories of tasks, it's outperforming state of the art models despite its much smaller size.
Wow, that's surprising. What do you think is the sort of TLDR takeaway, the lesson in this?
I just think we don't know what's going on yet. It's so early in these days. It's so easy to get caught up with like International Math Olympiad gold and feel like we're at the end of the AI race and we know who the winner is going to be. And, sometimes I wonder if we're really in the Friendster or MySpace era and we haven't seen the Facebook yet, at least in terms of architecture. And so much of these models has been built around how much bigger can the training data set? How many more parameters can we afford to train to make the model smarter? And this is just a good reminder that we may still have some really interesting changes in the architecture space to happen, and that the transformer, as remarkable as it's been, may not be the be all and end all of AI models and architectures for us. So just keep our eyes open on what's coming because it's just, I think, easy to get caught up in the speed and forget that it is really early, early days in the evolution of AI.
I think that's right. And I think a lot of the VCs out there that are making the multi-billion dollar investments agree with you that we are still in MySpace, but Facebook is coming. So that'll
Facebook.
be we'll see
Somebody's
what
going
it
to be the
is.
Meta. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to be the Google. Like, where are we going to come with these big generational companies? And it may be something a little different. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, we jumped from policy nerds to math nerds. Now, if you are a physics nerd, and I started off my college as a physics major, so physics nerds, this one's for you. AI is now designing experiments that look totally bizarre to humans, but they actually work.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that. A lot of physics experiments look bizarre to humans too, the traditional physics experiments, but tell me about the
These look
AI
bizarre
physics.
to experts.
Okay,
So
wow.
we're sort of talking about LIGO, the massive gravitational wave detector that can sense ripples in space-time smaller than the width of a proton, which I don't know how to like put my fingers together so small, but it's very small. Um, it took decades and thousands of scientists to fine-tune this machine, and yet when researchers like Rana Adhikari at Caltech asked AI for approaches to improve the machine, it came back with solutions that boosted LIGO sensitivity by 10 to 15%, which again may sound small, but for as optimized a machine as that is, that's a huge improvement in the effectiveness of a machine like this.
Yeah, that's crazy. And are these like were the suggestions things that maybe the humans had thought of but were previously like not doable without AI, or were these like net new things?
These were not. These were designs that made no sense to the human eye. They were messy. They were asymmetrical. They were, as Adhikari put it, alien. That was his word, which I thought was really fascinating. But once they dug in, they realized the AI was using obscure physics principles that had never been tested in real world experiments. But it added a huge light circulating ring that it turns out cuts down on quantum noise, something that even veteran physicists had not considered building, but seems to work in their theoretical models.
Okay, well, wild. Are there what kind of other examples did we see like this?
So you got a couple more like this, but here's one that caught my eye. In Germany, physicist Mario Kren and his team used their AI tool called Pythias. Again, these scientists are better at naming things than the AI companies. They really need to hire some of these guys to reinvent a decades-old quantum entanglement experiment. I can't explain that because I don't know what quantum entanglement is, but the AI delivered a totally new setup that was simpler and more elegant than the Nobel-winning original. And when a team in China built the AI's design, it worked exactly as predicted. So these are places where we're applying kind of known, maybe obscure physics and coming up with new experimental designs. And that these things are working, even though physicists think they look bizarre when they see them. So just an interesting application of AI, I thought.
That is it's super interesting and as far-fetched and foreign as it might feel for some of our listeners, I think it's a really important to sort of like case study to think about why it's so important to like approach this types of problems first principles and not just try to reinvent the wheel that you're already doing, but like actually do something new and like let the creative part come out, because these are things that the humans wouldn't have thought of, but the AI figured out. And so like really being open to that, I think is important.
Yeah, and the idea of using it to to say, "Hey, brainstorm me on crazy things I may not have thought of," or applying obscure theories I may not have thought to apply in this case. And, a lot of times people think AI is not creative. I mean, it's just always making things up. It's always being net new creative, and sometimes that creativity is bizarre, but these are great examples where you're not turning over a whole process to AI and worried that it'll get it wrong. It's suggesting things you could try, and some of them you may just say, "That's ridiculous. That won't work." But obviously, in some cases, it can come up with new and creative and functional ideas. So a great way to think about, one way to put AI into action.
Cool.
All right, well, we're going to bring us back down to earth now. No more crazy math, no more crazy physics, just Amazon. But Amazon made a bold move into the AI wearable game. They're acquiring Bee, a startup behind a $50 wristband that listens to your day and turns it into an AI-powered digest, to-do list, and reminders. Think of it like a Fitbit for your memory, constantly recording and transcribing conversations, and then summarizing them through a companion app.
This is like if you were just wearing your Alexa all the time and she was just listening to you, but they actually just say this one is listening.
Yeah, its whole point is to listen. You can also connect to your email, your contacts, and your calendar for smarter recommendations. Though the company insists that audio isn't stored or used for AI training. Apparently, the whole B team is coming over to Amazon. But I got to say, I'm not sure I want Amazon listening to my whole day. And I have a feeling that the creepy ads that follow me around the internet for my browsing behavior would only get worse if Amazon could actually know what I talked about all day, every day.
I for sure don't want Amazon listening to me all day, or any technology company for that matter. But if the utility was there and it was actually super helpful for me and it could help me remember stuff and it was like could end the problem of going downstairs and being like, why did I come down here? That would be helpful, right? So we'll see if it actually moves the needle. But I don't know. The smartwatch is sort of overdone. I'm not sure about this new wearable watch thing.
We'll see where it goes, and I'm not sure Amazon's the company I want putting it out there. If I have to have somebody listening to me all day, I'm not sure it's gonna be Amazon, so we'll see what happens, but I will say I do love seeing innovation in form factors, and this idea of an AI that is your personal AI and knows you and is helping you remember the things you might forget. We've all walked into a room and gone, "Why the hell did I come? What am I doing in here?" That would be really helpful. "What did I talk to Annie about earlier today? Shoot, I forgot." So that would be nice.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to switch from one big tech company in Amazon to another big tech company in Google. So over the past year, Google has fully rolled out AI overviews, those little Gemini generated blurbs that try to answer your question on the same search page. Google says these summaries help users and don't hurt websites, but a new Pew Research study says otherwise, and the numbers are pretty stark.
Show me the data, Jeff. What does it say?
So, according to Pew, when a search page does not include an AI overview, users click on its link about 15% of the time. But when that AI box shows up, click throughs drop almost in half to just 8%. Even more revealing, only 1% of users clicked on a source within the AI overview, and those sources are often from the same few platforms: Wikipedia, YouTube, and Reddit.
Okay, and has so that's the Pew data. What does the Google data say? Have we seen the Google data?
Google is pushing back hard. They haven't put out specific data to refute this, but they called Pew's methodology flawed and said they're still sending, quote, billions of clicks to websites daily. So I don't know how you measure that and compare it to previous times. But the takeaway is pretty clear. AI is changing not just what we see in search, but how we behave. And the ripple effects for publishers, content creators, and any kind of business relying on internet advertising and therefore traffic to their websites, it's pretty clear that this is not, at least yet, a real positive for them.
Yeah, I'm sure that it is true that Google is sending billions of things, but the question is, how does that compare to the old times? I got to believe they have data on that.
They do, and they're not exactly sharing it. It's also a question like a lot of Google searches, I don't know. When you ask a simple factual question, like you don't really want to be clicked. I mean, there is this tension here between what's good for the publishers of information and when you go, how many miles is it from the Earth to the sun, or what time is it in London? I don't want to get sent over to like somebody's clock website to find out the time in London. I just want a number. And so, this question of what percentage of clicks get sent over kind of, I think, construes or misconstrues like, are people asking different kinds of questions because of AI overviews? Are there places where the user experience is substantially enhanced by this kind of summarization of information? And what's the balance there between sending people to the sources so that the people making real useful content can be compensated and getting users information more quickly? It's not clear to me what the right balance between those two things is, or how you even measure growth in clicks, kinds of searches, that kind of thing that's happening as people do. I think at least the way I've Googled and searched changed a lot since the advent of AI. So what percentage of searches have a click out? Are there more searches because of AI, and are there different kinds of searches? It's a really hard question to untangle exactly what's happening, but it's clear that the economic models underpinning the old web are like, they're going to change.
They're gonna change, and I think that the other thing that you need a follow-up study on is you don't just want the click, you want the click to convert whatever you're selling on your website, so it's like, maybe you're getting fewer clicks, but they're all actually more excited about buying your product because they just heard about them in this cool AI summary that sang your praises, so, I don't know if studying number of clicks gives you enough of the whole story to really have it be a full data set there. You have to understand the whole story end of your production stream.
I think that's right. So I'm sure there will be more data coming out on this kind of topic. So we'll be revisiting this topic of the economics of the web. But we're going to end our AI radar segment today with another Google story. This one a little more fun and whimsical. Google just dropped some fun new generative AI features into Google Photos and YouTube Shorts. So if you've ever wanted to turn a still photo into a short video, this is your chance.
Okay, and so is this similar to last week we talked about the VO3 model? This is similar to that?
It's related. So these tools are built on Google's earlier VO2 powered photo to video tech that we saw in the Gemini app. And they come with a few constraints. In Google Photos, you can now generate 6-second video clips from your photos using preset prompts like subtle movements or I'm feeling lucky. Google's famous. Just trust me to get it right. You can't type in your own prompt yet. So it's more like picking from a menu than crafting your own artistic vision. And YouTube Shorts goes one step further, letting users choose the length of video, but it's still to those kind of pre-canned prompt options. So just taking an image you've got and turning it into a short video that you can either use for YouTube Shorts or, if you want to turn that still of your kids into a moving picture, we'll see how good they do at converting that.
Hopefully, they do better than the, like, Apple Intelligence photo features, not to put
It's a
Apple
low bar.
Intelligence on it's a low bar, yeah. But, so can I play with them? Can I do an A/B test yet?
These features are rolling out now to US users on Android and iOS. Photos users hit YouTube Shorts in US and Canada over the next week. I have not seen them yet. I've been checking. I have not checked today, but in the next couple of days, you should be able to get them in the Google Photos app on your mobile phone and play with them. So you're going to find me there messing around with the latest tools.
Alright, yeah, it's, Google's getting into the remix game. It's like when ChatGPT moved from DALL-E to the, like, Studio Ghibli and everybody melted the GPUs trying to make their own, photos here.
Yeah, I've got my Studio Ghibli saved. Funny you would say that because there's also a new remix tool coming to Google Photos that's going to let you transform your images into anime, comic book art, sketches, 3D animations. All of this will live under a new Create tab in the app, launching next month. So, they're kind of consolidating all these tools together. I don't know if they have a Studio Ghibli style built into their little prompts, but it is kind of fun, I got to say, to take a photo and then restyle it into a different kind of anime style or cartoon style or superhero comic book style or whatever. So I'm sure I'm gonna be having fun playing with all these tools.
I know, I think it is gonna be fun. I sent you this is an aside, but I sent you this, video on that Ben Affleck was talking about the future of AI and how it's gonna impact and he was speculating that there's gonna be some point in the future where you'll watch a TV show and you'll be able to use AI to, like, customize your own ending that you wanted, like, "Show me this character doing this thing," or whatever, and everybody's gonna be able to, and that sort of made me laugh because I was like, "That'd be a weird use case," but these things feel like we're getting closer to that kinda moment.
Yeah, I think it will be a little choose your own adventure. Ben, if you guys haven't seen the Ben Affleck, I think it was at WHA's Dealbook or somebody. We'll put the link in the show notes. But it's a really good actual description of probably the near to medium term impacts of AI in Hollywood and creativity. It was a good video. Good
Yeah,
find.
cool.
Well, let's move on to AI in the wild and explore how companies, communities, and creators are putting AI into action. Andy, what do you got us for AI in the wild this week?
Well, more medical news for you, Jeff. This time coming out of Africa, of all places. Can AI Copilot make you a better doctor, even in the middle of a Nairobi clinic? So, this is what OpenAI set out to test by partnering with Penda Health. This is a primary care provider operating across 16 clinics in Kenya. And they studied 40,000 patient visits, so a lot of patients coming in to see what happens when an AI assistant is sort of quietly operating in the background, monitoring care, looking out for risks, nudging the clinician towards better decisions.
That is an interesting description. Before we get to the results, because we like to see the data, what does that mean like in the background? Can you tell us a little bit about how the AI was actually being used here?
Yeah, so it was actually a pretty cool and somewhat simple red, yellow, green type of implementation. So the Copilot was basically integrated into the electronic health record of the patient, and as the clinician was interacting with the patient and documenting the visit, this thing would also sort of send anonymized information and pings to OpenAI through a like API key point. And so then the AI consult would come back with sort of needed information for the clinician in real time. And there would be three types of responses, essentially, as I mentioned: green, yellow, red. Green means no concerns. Yellow means there's some moderate concerns. You should, review these, look into something, ask more questions. And then red indicates safety critical issue. That would appear sort of as a pop-up that the clinician was required to sort of view and act on before moving forward. And so that was sort of the response that was sent in a UX to the actual doctor.
I love this implementation, and I want to come back to this. But first, tell me, like, how did it go? Like, what were the results? What's the data coming off this thing?
The results were pretty good. You can think of it high level. They had two groups. So I mentioned 40,000 patients, about 20,000 in group A, about 20,000 in group B. Group A was, clinician assisted by AI. Group B was just a clinician. And they found that the clinicians using AI had 16% fewer diagnostic errors, 13% fewer treatment mistakes, and that actually for the high severity red alert type of issues, there was a 31% drop in diagnostic errors. So the doctors could see the results of this. They surveyed them afterwards and they reported that AI improved the quality of care, 75% rating it as a substantial improvement in quality of care.
It's a pretty big deal, not only to get those kind of results, but also like 100% of doctors said this made me better, and 75% said substantially better. Like that's a pretty remarkable. What do you take away from that in terms of what made this? This seems like a pretty successful deployment versus some others we've heard of, where deployments are kind of underutilized. What do you see driving that success?
I mean, I think the implementation approach really matters. Penda sort of embedded the Copilot into a system that the doctors were already using, and then they tailored the responses to the local medical guidelines. And they supported adoption through training and through peer mentoring and all of this type of stuff so that users knew how to interact with it. They sort of understood how to interact with it. They knew how to apply it. And I think that really helped them feel successful in using it. It didn't feel like this scary, weird thing that they were implementing into a process that they had no idea what was going on. It was just implemented as part of their standard workflow that they were already used to, and then made in an easy to action on way. Green, yellow, red. We all know how to do that.
We all know this was such a fascinating story to me in the sense that, like, the integration to how they're already working kind of passively. It's not a doctor going, "Hey, I want to consult ChatGPT now. What does it think?" Just kind of always there in the background, double checking you, nudging you, leaving the doctor in control. So again, all these concerns about, what if it hallucinates? Well, the doctor's still making the final decision, so they're going to double check if there's an issue. I love that. And then it also occurred to me this kind of like you're learning in real time too. I mean, when there's a yellow or red that pops up, it's kind of saying, "Hey, you missed something," or maybe you missed something. That's an opportunity to like go, "Hey, yeah." I mean, you're learning in real time as a doctor. You'd be reminded of something. It seems like a really interesting in deployment, and just reminds me of how much of the value these models can unlock is really tied to how well we deploy them in the real world, and not just how smart are they. I mean, we talk about the math Olympiad or whatever, but like how you deploy these makes such a difference in the value people can get out of them. And it's a great reminder that there's a ton of value already there if we know how to put these things into practice.
Yeah, I think that's right. We talked about that story last week where somebody had said 10% is the models and 90% is the humans, right? And how we're using them and how we're encouraging others to use them. So this is a perfect practical example of that.
Well, this is one great practical example, but we'd love to hear from yours too, from our audience. Tell us about a time AI has surprised you or something you're using it for daily or on the routine. How is it changing your workflow? Send us your stories, your prompts, your favorite use cases, and maybe we will feature yours in an upcoming episode. As always, you can reach us at email@whattheai.fm. And now let's bring it home, Andy, with AI alignment. We got a couple of stories, I think, here this week. Exploring the latest policies, debates, and ethical questions shaping our smarter and safer AI future. What do you have for us for AI alignment?
All right. Well, so this is an interesting one. We talk a lot, or people talk a lot about AI hallucinating, but can we manipulate AI into doing something that it shouldn't? According to Wharton researchers, yes, we can, and the results are pretty alarming.
Okay, you piqued my interest. How do I manipulate my AI? What are you talking about here? What would they find?
Okay, well, how do you manipulate your friends? It's the same approaches that you would use to manipulate AI, it turns out, which is fascinating. So let me explain that. The generative AI lab at Wharton ran over 28,000 conversations with GPT-4o Mini, testing whether persuasion techniques that influence humans could also sway AI models. They were using the 6 classic principles of influence, so authority, commitment, liking, reciprocity, scarcity, and unity, to see if they could coax the model into breaking its own safety rules.
Okay, what safety rules? Like what kind of safety rules we're talking about here? What are we trying to get it to do?
Some of the things that are forbidden for the LLM to do might be something like insulting the user. So the LLM is not supposed to insult the user, and the LLMs are not supposed to give instructions for like synthesizing restricted materials, stuff like that. So those are safety protocols that are embedded in these LLMs. So that what they were specifically trying to do was break the LLMs and get them to violate these specific protocols.
All right. If I know my 6 classic principles of influence, I can make and do it.
Well, you really actually only need two. It turns out scarce yeah, scarcity and commitment are the two. So without persuasion, meaning, no intentional psychological manipulation, GPT-4o Mini complied around 33% of the time. But when the researchers layered in psychological nudges, that number jumped from 33% to 72%. And the techniques that were the most effective, as I mentioned, were scarcity and commitment. So things like, "Oh, come on, you helped me the last time. We're so close. Help me finish this thing." And then they were more likely to the LLM was more likely to try to acquiesce to your request, because of that sort of nudging, or scarcity of like, "Oh my gosh, we have to hurry. We only have a few more minutes. We don't have time on this. Give me the codes," whatever it might be. And so those were the two sort of most compelling persuasion techniques to manipulate GPT-4o Mini.
I feel like I got to go back and read my psychology books and my 6 kinds of influence. Apparently, it's good on not only my kids and my coworkers, but also my AI models. So it seems like more, at least 2 chapters worth reading. But on a more serious note, this felt like a very interesting finding in that I think of this as the kind of thing you do through code or some sort of malicious attack that is technical in nature. But now you're talking about using psychology to do what I would think of as a technical attack to kind of jailbreak an AI, which is just kind of a fascinating reality that this is now maybe a different skill set than you might have thought you needed that's able to actually jailbreak these things and get them to do things they're not supposed to.
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, I think from an AI safety standpoint, this is a definite red flag. It's not a yellow flag. The AI models don't just reflect the data that they're trained on. They actually are responding to social dynamics the way that humans respond to social dynamics. And the scary thing about social dynamics is we don't really understand them in humans, and now we're really not going to understand them in AI, right? So as models grow more autonomous and sort of agentic, how do we guard against this type of manipulation? How do we like put technical patches in to protect us from this type of manipulation? I think it's a signal of just sort of a lot deeper partnership needed between the AI labs and then like the behavioral scientists and those few people who really do understand social dynamics to try to advise and opine on this type of stuff to keep a safe future for AI.
All right. So calling all psychologists. Now we need I need my Lisa DeMore podcast for parenting. And now the AI researchers only need to be listening to the Lisa DeMore podcast and reading their psychology books. I mean, it is fascinating, but it's amusing that it concerns us so much in AI in the sense that we still don't, to your point, understand why these things work necessarily in humans. We just kind of can document how they work, but we don't really understand why. And I don't know why we expect to understand the AI brains we built better than we understand our own. We've been working with our own for a lot longer, and we still don't really understand how they work.
Well, it's funny, AI has just come so far and, the work that I've done at Upstart has been mostly focused on predictive AI, of course, which is different from the generative AI. But whenever I used to talk in the early days to regulators and to significant lending partners and stuff like that, and they would ask about whether using AI was scary. I'm like, well, it's a lot less scary than using human brain power because if it does something or thinks in a way you don't like, you can just rewire it, and it's easy to rewire it, and you can use math to make it how you want. And so now I'm like, oh man, like for these generative AI models, that's sort of out the window if it's going to be, more prone to social dynamics and stuff like that, that my traditional predictive AI is not. So
Whole new world of things for us to think about.
that's right. All right. I got one more for you. You ready?
All right, let's hear it. Last one.
We're going to close out today talking about Meta. I got to always talk about Meta when we talk about safety. Is Meta standing up for innovation or is it sidestepping accountability? This is the question. So, Meta has officially gone on record saying no thank you to the European Union's new voluntary AI code of practice. Joel Kaplan, who is Meta's chief global affairs officer, took to LinkedIn and he said that the company will not sign the EU's framework because he says it is legally murky and it is overreaching.
All right, I'm just gonna say 3 things. A, LinkedIn. Love that that's how we post official company announcements now over X, I guess maybe. And second, calling any EU legal framework murky and overreaching feels on point. I'm gonna say that honestly, that feels kind of refreshingly honest and truthful. But before I judge the AI code of practice, can you remind me a little bit about what this thing is?
Yeah, so it's basically the code is designed to give a guide that's like a general purpose how-to guide for AI systems like Meta's Llama models, saying how they should operate, and it focuses on safety, transparency, copyright compliance. It is not a legally binding code. It's meant to help companies stay ahead of the broader AI Act, which is legally binding. That's enforceable and it comes with serious teeth. There's fines for 7% global revenue for violations. And so the idea behind this code is to give a sort of roadmap for compliance, so to speak, for companies who are trying to bring AI to the European Union in a compliant way. And this is complying with this code will sort of fast track their ability to do that. Meta has said, not us. We're not going to do it.
Have others said not us? Or do we know what others think of this thing yet?
There have been some that have said not us, mostly like specific European companies that have signed on. But some of the other big companies, notably some of the other big US companies like OpenAI, has said that it will sign the code pending sort of final approval. And it says that it reflects a commitment to providing safe and inclusive AI for European users. OpenAI is also throwing its hat in the ring for the EU's planned AI gigafactories, which are expected to run on more than 100,000 cutting edge chips to help European firms train frontier models. So Meta is saying no, thank you. OpenAI is saying, yes, we will sign this thing. So it's a good question about whether Meta is sort of the more honest ones here, saying this is murky. We can't really, in good faith, say we're going to comply with it because we don't really know how it's going to play out. But it's definitely putting a target on their back because the EU has said anybody who doesn't sign this thing will be faced with greater scrutiny than anybody who does sign it. So, Meta's taken a pretty big risk here by saying they won't do it.
I gotta say, I kind of respect the honesty and the willingness to step up and take the extra scrutiny to be truthful. And it does feel a little weird that there's like a voluntary code of conduct that's meant to precede the actual legal enforceable regulations that we haven't kind of come up with yet. And in the history of the EU, typically you don't really know how to comply with them. Like the Digital Markets Act has been kind of infamous for. You go, what do I have to do to comply with this? I go, we don't know. We'll just sue you if we think you're out of compliance, but we'll fine you a whole bunch of money. But there's no way to go to them and proactively say, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Is this in compliance with your law? So I can understand the hesitance to get in bed with agreeing to this thing in advance without really understanding what's coming. So the EU is a fascinating space in terms of how all the regulation plays out, because it seems to be a little more heavy handed than what we have here in the US, even had Biden's executive order stayed in place, which obviously now they have not. But it'll be interesting to see how everybody else responds to both this voluntary code of conduct and then the final actual AI Act.
Yeah, it will be interesting. We will watch it unfold.
We will. But that's it for this week of What the AI. We'll be back next week, maybe with more stories about this topic. Who knows if there's anybody else coming out saying yay or nay to their AI code of conduct. But we'll be back next week with more insights, breakdowns, and just plain old What the AI moments. Make sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone else you know who's trying to navigate this crazy age of AI. And don't forget to send us your questions, prompts, and favorite AI stories at email@whattheaifn. You just might get featured in our next episode. Annie, I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message and we do our best to cover them all on the show.